there's nothing like being in there and hearing the crowd and everything going well. You're working, working with your opponent and getting to the back and just um yeah, just that is the best feeling in the world. So,
When you made your debut in the early 2000s, talk to me about your first few matches. Were you scared? Were you
I
nervous?
was I was scared. Yeah, I was so nervous. They were horrible matches. Probably my it was right after 9/11 in 2001. And they were just I took like a phantom bump and but it was when I got to the back, it was like the best feeling ever. I was like, I knew I got to do this. I got to get better at it. And I just wanted to wrestle as much as possible, whether it was setting up rings locally here in New England and just traveling with other people to shows. Just started to just every weekend, I wanted to do something. I just couldn't wait for training and just going to the gym and just, it was just totally immersed. This was um, I was working as a teacher's aide at the time, so it allowed me weekends off. I could get out of school at 2 o'clock, and it was I just wrestling was my job. The other thing was just to kind of, you know, um, have something financially. So
Yeah, and it's always good to have that backup plan, have that just in case
yeah,
something doesn't.
absolutely, yeah, yeah, yep.
And so, what point did you meet your tag team partner?
I met him early on in my training before I even had a match. I started training at a place closer to Springfield because it was like 10 minutes away. And I met him there. Smart Mark Sterling from AEW was training there at the time. And yeah, so we met then and we really didn't team up until about 3 years later, 2004. Started teaming up regularly for a local promotion. Um, but then we got to OVW and we got to WWE separately. So I guess he moved down there and then I got signed as a singles. And then Jim Cornette put us together once we were in OVW and you know,
Any fun memories you want to share about your time in OVW?
it was all like once we started teaming, it was some of the most fun I've ever had in wrestling. It was tough at first because I'd never really been away from home in the area, and then moving down south. Louisville is not really too south, but um, kind of that southern, slow, relaxed southern way of life when you grow up in the Northeast and everything's like, you know, just everyone's in a hurry all the time. So just being away from my friends and my comforts. It was rough. It was a rough first few months for me, but and I just had some injuries. I tore my hip, burst a sac in my elbow, which I never had, I never really gotten injured before. So in wrestling. So um yeah, once we started teaming as the Heartbreakers, it was the most fun, maybe the most fun I've ever had in wrestling. And it was only for 3 months, and then we got called up. But it was awesome. I would have loved to been there in OVW, like at least for the rest of the year. But you can get the call at any time to debut, so you gotta always be ready. You gotta always be prepared.
And making that transition is a whole nother breed in itself, too, because you're working in front of big crowds, big arenas.
Working in front of a big crowd is so much easier than in front of a small crowd. Especially like working in front of 10 people is harder than working in front of 10,000. So it was mostly just trying to find, what WWE wanted from us, what there was never kind of clear, hey, we want you to be this and act this way or do this or whatever. So and plus, we were the youngest guys there. We were there. We were on Raw. We were learning live without a net. So we were literally learning, you know, on TV. And it was tough because you're there with everyone else on the roster at the time was 10, 15, 20 years in. And, here we are, we're 2 or 3 years in. So it was tough. We did as good as we could, but it was like we are always swimming upstream.
Whose idea was it to be known as the Heart Throbs, that gimmick.
They changed, well, Jim Cornette gave us the Heartbreakers gimmick and just like the furthest thing from us. So we just kind of made it as like crazy and unique as possible. And it was totally different in OVW. It was, we were baby faces, kind of fun loving. And then they didn't really give us say, hey, be that, or hey, be like, the Hollywood Blondes, or be like an arrogant team. They didn't really say that. They just said, well, we're going to change your name to the Heart Throb. So, but you just you are playing a part. So it's like being an actor. You gotta whatever they give you, this is your chance, and you gotta try to make the best of it. They broke up some teams. Really, it was us, Regal and Tajiri, and then Hurricane and Rosie for like 6 months on house shows. Then Kate and Murdoch came in. Then like the Highlanders and the Spirit Squad came a little after that. But they would always, it wasn't like the 80s where there was like 5 or 6 heel and babyface teams on each side. It was like they had a couple teams. And then, so like we worked with Hurricane and Rosie like on all the house shows for 5 months. Um, so it was, I wouldn't call it if you combine SmackDown and Raw, maybe there were a handful of tag teams, but it
Hmm.
was they kind of cycled in,
This
you
was
know,
around the brand split because you guys were on Raw and SmackDown had
this was 2005,
other.
2006. We were on
Yeah,
Raw. We were never on
yeah.
SmackDown. Yeah.